North Korea has recently held the 7th Congress of the Workers' Party of Korea, which took place after 36 years since the 6th Congress back in October 1980. Global society has paid a lot of attention on the result of the 7th Congress, which is expected to impose a significant impact on the Kim Jong-un's regime in the near future. On this week's Upfront, we discuss the significance and major points of the 7th Congress of the Workers' Party of Korea.
North Korea's 7th Congress of Workers' Party was held to officially consolidate and institutionalize Kim Jong-un's power in the regime. International community has paid a lot of attention on this biggest political event within the North, which has been held in 36 years. North Korea's Workers' Party is the highest administrative authority in the North. According to the Constitution of North Korea, Democratic People's Republic of Korea is under the leadership of the Workers' Party of Korea, and the party dominates everything in North Korea. It even controls the country as a whole. As the country's top decision-making body, North Korea's Congress of the Workers' Party makes every political decision, including party institutions, power restructuring, and policy-making process. North Korea's Congress of the Workers' Party has been held 6 times from 1946 to 1980. All 6 previous Congresses came under Kim Il-sung, and Kim Jong-il came to be officially and openly presented as his father's successor during the Congress. However, the event was never occurred in Kim Jong-il's time. And unlike his father, Kim Jong-un has held the 7th Congress on the 5th year of his rule. Media outlets in the North have continuously promoted the event and emphasized the achievement of Kim Jong-un. It has been considered as part of an effort to idolize its leader. The global society has especially paid attention to North Korea's nuclear issue, among a lot of different agenda items of the Congress. On the 7th Congress, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has officially announced his parallel policy of nuclear and economic development. Kim Jong-un declared North Korea as a nuclear state by praising its previous nuclear tests.
경제 건설과 핵무력 건설을 병진시킬 때 대한 전략적 노선을 항구적으로 틀어주고 자위적인 핵무력을 질량적으로 더욱 강화해 나갈 것입니다.
Kim Jong-un also announced a new 5-year plan for the development of North Korea during the event as part of his efforts to follow the steps of his grandfather, Kim Il-sung. All eyes of the global society has been on the North's 7th Congress. Upfront discusses the major points of the event and its expected impact on the international society.
For today's discussion, we're joined by great and indeed distinguished guests today here in the studio. First, we're joined by Yoo Ho-yeol, Executive Vice-chairperson of the National Unification Advisory Council, which is a presidential advisory board. Welcome to the program. Welcome back to the program, actually. The chairperson in this council is indeed the president himself.
Exactly, yes.
And we're also joined by Kang, Vice President of Asan Institute for Policy Studies. Welcome back to the program as well, John.
Thank you.
Now, let's start with the significance of this party congress. This is the first time that Kim Jong-un has this party congress, and the global communities taking an active interest in it. First of all, tell us, what's the significance of party congress in North Korea?
Well, actually, North Korea is a communist country. A communist country is controlled, ruled by the Communist Party. Mm-hmm. North Korea is a workers' party. And therefore, it's very natural for North Korea, like a communist country like North Korea, to hold Congress, party Congress, every 5 years according to their rule. However, over the last 36 years, since 1980, North Korea had no chance to hold this kind of party Congress. Mm-hmm. And therefore, I think under Kim Jong-un, he tried to become a sole leader, and he tried to review what had happened in North Korea. And he wanted to show his own vision, not just to North Korean people, but to the world. And therefore, I think it's Kim Jong-un's decision to hold this kind of party congress to provide his plans and visions to the people.
I see. From our point and also the global the leaders' point of view, I guess, is there a special reason to take active notice on this 7th Congress?
Of course. Actually, before I answer the question, but because for the past 20 years, North Korea has been governed by the military. So this is convening of a 7th Party Congress means that maybe it's coming to normalcy, as Dr. Yoo has mentioned. North Korea is ruled by the Communist Party under the Kim Jong-un leadership. That's actually kind of significance of having this party congress. And also this, because we expected something new or bold approach could be announced at the party congress, because actually in New Year's speech, Kim Jong-un mentioned about the glorious plan will be announced at the 7th Party Congress. But as of today, we have not seen any meaningful change in their policy yet. So this is going to be inauguration, so-called official inauguration of Kim Jong-un's era. Because of course, Kim Jong-un took the first secretary of the Korean Workers' Party in December 2012, but actually it was informal. But this is formalizing his control of the regime.
Right, right. One of the minor points is that the date when this party congress is being held. Our government has expected the different dates, but it seems like the date always falls on in some coincidence on a national holiday in South Korea. Do you see the significance of that?
Well, I think it depends on Kim Jong-un's choice, the exact date, because he is the supreme leader, and therefore I think there are a couple of cases for him to consider the exact date. First of all, he mentioned about the 70 days of battle in preparation for the party congress. And therefore, when the battle actually ended, and then the party congress will resume. And therefore, the exact date is not important, but the exact date is what they think that actually the party congress prepared, they decided.
Yep. First, somebody said, oh, because this is a weekend, they try to get more attention or try to put more pressure outside the world.
Are we being too sensitive?
Too sensitive. But I don't think that's the right reason. But actually, he has chosen May, the best season of the year. Actually, until the end of April, we usually have a 4-week exercise, military exercise. So May would be the best, maybe the most peaceful month of the year. So maybe because of that reason why he has chosen May, but the exact date, maybe nobody knows exactly why May 6th was chosen to be the date of beginning of 7th Party Congress.
Okay. More significantly, I think you started to mention that, but there has been no party congress for the past 36 years. Why do you think is the reason? Why has such a long absence?
Well, actually, former leader Kim Il-sung mentioned that the party congress, actually, according to their party's rule, party congress will have to be held in every 5 years. But over the last 70 years, North Korean Workers' Party had only 6 party congress. And therefore, I think it costs a lot to prepare, and they have to announce something at the party congress.
Right.
And therefore, I think over the last 36 years, Kim Il-sung mentioned that when the economy had been improved, the Congress should be open, and therefore the economy in North Korea has been declined over the last 36 years, and therefore it is not necessary for them to open. And also under Kim Jong-il, he didn't like to have this kind of ceremonial type of Congress, and therefore he mentioned the politics of the military force, and he controlled behind the scene. And therefore, I think Kim Jong-un tried to follow what his grandfather had done, and therefore he tried to normalize the politics in North Korea, and therefore he decided to have this kind of Congress.
There is a pattern of going back to the Kim Il-sung times,
of course,
which has been a consistent kind of pattern.
Of course, until the 6th Party Congress, North Korea has actually had announced very important policy lines, for example, a 5-year economic development plan or this consolidation of some kinds of economic achievement. And also, actually, in the SixParty Congress, they actually had introduced the Korea Federation, Korea Yeonbangje, their own formula of unification.
Right.
And so, whenever they feel some necessity of having the event to announce something meaningful for domestic reason or for the external relations, they usually had that. But for the past 20 years, the situation was not right. Because actually it's about around those guys, they felt isolated and threatened by outside the world. So Kim Jong-il didn't have much to offer to these people.
I see.
So I think this maybe Kim Jong-un felt it is necessary to announce or maybe to host this party congress to announce the kinds of new vision of his regime for the future. So that's why he had decided to host this
now,
party
what were
congress.
some meaningful topics that you mentioned? What were some past topics?
Past topic, like for example, in the SixParty Congress, that was Kim Jong-il was nominated as a kind of one of co-leader of the this Kim family regime, and also their own formula of unification was announced. Before that, also economic development program, and also maybe before this, I think up to the third party Congress is about the politics.
I see.
So where the North Korean Workers' Party should be the leading organ in North Korea and what kinds of policy line we have to pursue. But from the fourth, fifth, sixth is about the economic program, because they felt some hardships of their economy and they felt isolated. So that was the moment. So it depends on the situation. But this point of time is a combination of economics and politics.
So would it be fair to say, as you mentioned, whenever there is some foundational or important political matters, and also economic plan or some significant events like that, that befits having this party congress.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Now, if we were to look at the kind of political side of it, I think that a lot of people expect that this young leader would be, as you said, it's a crowning moment, right? Now, do you think that he has achieved that much, meaning that he has already consolidated power? This is a kind of a grandstanding of what he has accomplished, or do you think this is more of a procedural matter to give legitimacy and procedural legitimacy to his ascendancy?
Well, actually in North Korea, there is absolutely no doubt about role and influence of Kim Jong-un as a supreme leader. And therefore, I think Kim Jong-un doesn't feel any necessity to have this kind of event. However, over the last 5 years, under Kim Jong-un, he persecuted some of the top elite in North Korea, and therefore he tried to review what happened and why he did that kind of a purge for his close elite in party and in the military. And therefore, I think Kim Jong-un tried to, using this kind of event, using this kind of party congress, he tried to raise up his status as a supreme and authoritarian leader to explain why he did that kind of purge or execution. And he tried to show up his own power and influence to the party members and to the people, that it is the kind of regime and country, state run by Kim Jong-un himself.
On this topic, we had a chance to meet an expert who can tell us more about what's going on behind the scene in North Korea. Let's take a look at that.
I think this is Kim Jong-un's formal after-the-fact coming out party, because his secession process was rushed by his father's health in 2008. He was debuted at a party conference in 2010, but not a formal congress like Kim Jong-il was by Kim Il-sung. So I think this is a chance for him to have his moment in the sun the way his father did. Also, Kim Jong-il emphasized the military over the party, especially given the fact that they had lost their Soviet satellite state allies, and you had the Great Famine in the 1990s. So there wasn't a lot to celebrate or trumpet at a Congress. And the military first policy reigned supreme. So this is Kim Jong-un's chance to show that the party is more in charge than the military is and put his own stamp on things. I think he will stay in power so long as China wants him there, because China's not happy with Kim Jong-un, but the alternative means a united Korea and a U.S. ally on China's doorstep, and Beijing cannot yet come to terms with that. So I think Beijing will give Kim Jong-un just enough to survive, and really he'll be around as long as they want him around. So the sanctions are still pretty new, so let's not jump to conclusions that they've been ineffective. They've got to have some effect, and the real trick will be whether or not China fully complies. And again, I think we need to go after the Chinese banking system because that's how these things are funded. And while North Korea's economy is fairly insignificant to Beijing, in northeastern China, it means a lot to a lot of people, and a lot of people depend on business across the border in North Korea. So we can't expect them to stop their trading with North Korea, especially when Chinese customs officials can't be trusted to implement the sanctions fully. And the fact that North Korean ships may be going to a fellow rogue state or a failed, like Iran, or a failed state like Somalia, that doesn't surprise me. But again, the real trick is whether or not China is going to fully comply, and we have yet to see if that's the case.
Dr. Choi,
Yes.
back in this power base issue, there's this issue that the Kim Jong-un, being a very young leader, there is a generational change.
Yes.
And if he has successfully consolidated power or in the process of it, probably he will want to put his people in the key places. Do you see that happened in the party Congress?
Actually, we can't tell at this point of time, but actually we have a precursor for that. So actually, old guard who carried the coffin of Kim Jong-il, most of them have been replaced by the young leaders. For example, Hwang Byung-seo, Choi Ryong-hae actually came to much closer to the center of power, and also all the guard are gone almost. So actually, we have to see below that level. I think that maybe there could be some sort of generation change. Maybe I don't know exactly the average age of the key personnel in North Korea. Maybe it's around 60s or late 50s. So we have to look at the party members or the Politburo members. Of course, there are 3 permanent members in Politburo of Central, and also below that there's a regular member and also the candidate. So we have to closely look at who has joined or who has been replaced with whom. So that's a critical point of time. That's one. Second part is whether it's a proportional ratio between the military and the party.
I see.
So we have to look at it. So those are the two signs, but it's still unclear whether there's a real, meaningful generational change. But this has been in Korea since the early 2013, so it's nothing new. But anyway, we have to look at more the personnel reshuffling.
I think that is I think it's a little bit uncertain, but I would still invite your view on that, because it is important. On top of the generational change, whether there would be a hawkish or dovish, do we have technocrats in there focused on the economy, or are they going to be more of a military dominance?
Well, actually, military is a very important institute in North Korea. However, under Kim Jong-un, he tried to regard party members as well as the technocrats, like scientists or the people concerning the nuclear and missile technology. And therefore, under Kim Jong-un, new generation or younger generation might be emerged as a key group in the party as well in the state. And technocrats might be a lot of new members be recruited, but not at the top level or high level. They try to maintain some of the old people to consolidate the power in North Korea.
Right. For young generations, this is kind of a minor point as well, but attending this Congress and meeting with Kim Jong-un maybe a photo opportunity for the South Korea. But that would be a kind of career changer, wouldn't it?
Oh, definitely, because if they have a chance to meet and if they were able to shake hands with Kim Jong-un, it's an honor. Also, maybe he or she will be felt like blessed by the Kim Jong-un. Say, I met our dear leader Kim Jong-un. I'm an important person, so I can do whatever I want. So actually, this kind of recognition of their status in North Korean society, and also they can be much more influential in carrying out special policies or in their own society. So I think this is, of course, about more than 3,000 people gather over there. So it's kind of the personal feeling is there. I definitely think so, because actually So I'm much more privileged by attending. I'm representing. I'm a member of North Korean society under the Kim Jong-un. That kind of feeling will be shared by the attendees of the party congress.
Right. Now, let's get back to one of the key points of these aspiring young leaders, the economic policy. As Dr. Choi has already mentioned, and you have mentioned as well, in the past, the announcement of economic policy is one of the significant announcements or the declaration for them. Do you think there was a key emphasis on the economy on this one?
Well, actually, last year when North Korea celebrated the party's 70 years foundation, and they tried to plan this kind of party congress to become a new kind of chance for them to show their blueprint for economy. And according to Kim Jong-un, he promised to recover the economic difficulties, and he wanted to maintain his dual policy or parallel policy to develop nuclear weapon as well as economic development. But I think because of North Korea's continuous development of nuclear weapon, the international community had already a very harsh sanctions against North Korea. And therefore, even though North Korean leader and North Korean party try to emphasize economic development, but in practice, it is almost impossible for them to develop as they plan because of lack of foreign investment and lack of resources, domestic resources. And therefore, in the party congress, even though they try to show up their 5-year term economic development plan, but there is no significant details how to achieve, what kind of goals that they would like to develop, except energy or electricity.
I see.
So actually, I agree with Dr. Yoo, his point on this the economic program announced during this party congress. It seems to me that it's quite interesting. The Kim Jong-un admitted some failures in their policy and the imbalance of the economy, imbalance the development of the economy. So admitted that, and also he underscored the importance of people's economy very much. So he actually put more emphasis on the fact that which are more directly related to people's life. So he mentioned energy, food, and agricultural sector. So actually, that is a reflection of Kim Jong-un's statement, previous statement. He said, "I won't let my people starve again. I won't let my people tighten up their belt again." So he actually made a commitment to the people about the better life. So actually, he echoed himself again in this party congress by announcing the importance, of course, the 5-year economic development plan. He just gave out some directives, not details. Detail will be worked out by the below the level, the actual technocrats in the government or the party. They will work on that. So how can they boost up their economy? And one interesting is actually they like to go for more advanced economy type, like information-based economy and service sector. That's quite interesting. So those two elements are actually reflection of Kim Jong-un's mindset. Very much in the future economy, it's not because of heavy industry, it's about information-based economy, service sector. So Kim Jong-un has been working to bring more foreign capital to boost up service sector. For example, he tried to build the Mashingyang ski resort and opening of all these things, but he has not been so much successful in carrying out. But that's why he said there's some problems in our economy.
So his ideas has been pretty, I wouldn't say avant-garde, but pretty advanced to defeat the young leader. But I guess you're pessimistic about the economic outlook because of the sanction situation.
Yeah.
And if North Korea does not have economic collaboration with other countries, as is the usual mode of development these days, how can he make it even when China is not stepping up?
But on domestic factors are also the problem of source. Actually, social problem, because they don't have infrastructures to support the Kim Jong-un's dream or wish to become a more advanced economy. They don't have any reliable supply of energy, as Dr. Yoo mentioned, and also they don't have any attractiveness to bring the foreign capital in their own society. So the economy is still based upon heavy industry.
Right.
So it takes time for them to convert their heavy industry-based economy to a more light industry or the consumer-oriented industry.
Right. On this issue, Dr. Yoo, Kim Jong-un did spend some time gloating about their improved economy. Do you think that has some basis on that kind of boasting of the improved economy?
Well, actually, North Korea, up until the beginning of this year, they had a pretty much a good trade with China. And one of the reasons why North Korean leaders decided to hold this kind of party congress last year was that they could get positive economic assistance from China, because one of the leading Chinese politicians was invited at the party celebration last year, and therefore I think they had a plan to show up this kind of planning with the assistance and trade and investment from China. But because of North Korea's provocation and Chinese active involvement in sanctions, and therefore it is almost impossible at this moment that North Korea could not develop without getting help or assistance from China or recovering the trade with China as they had done in the past years.
I see. The estimate is that North Korea has trade with China, which take up about 70% of their trade volumes. So losing China, to note that China did not send any emissary to the party congress this time. So that is an indication of the soured relationship, and that can influences their relationship in economic terms.
And therefore, I think at party congress, they try to send the message that they can develop both nuclear weapons and economic development, but in practical situation, it is almost impossible. And North Korea should realize that they have to reconsider their plan and their master plans to develop their own economy and their party direction.
I see. Right. Dr. Yoo, another important point that we kind of take notice is their unification policy. Did you see any difference or the new policies that Kim Jong-un has announced or indicated in terms of how he wants to kind of push forward the unification policy? For example, in the past, Kim Il-sung has had a concrete proposal of one people, one nation, but two systems, right?
Yeah.
And a federation system, of course. Did you see any significant shift or any changes?
I don't think there is any significant change or progress or development under North Korea's position toward the unification issue. They just repeated what Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il had mentioned on the unification issues, federations and that kind of proposals to dialogue with South Korea. But the problem is that North Korea still maintains its position to maintain nuclear weapon status. And therefore, without changing its nuclear position or policy, I think it is almost impossible for us to accept North Korea's proposal to have a dialogue, even in a kind of a military section.
Right. Of course, a follow-up of that is that North Korea has suggested, which I think is either curious or not so much, he reiterated his demand that the American troops in Korean Peninsula be withdrawn. And also he suggested a military officials meeting between the North and South. I mean, it could be a coincidence that the United States is going through this election cycle, so that might be under consideration. But do you see that this is a genuine effort to kind of reach out and kind of offer or start the new dialogues?
Well, I think it's a kind of a pseudo or it's kind of their propaganda that they want to have a dialogue with the U.S., but as you mentioned, that they might be prepared for the next president in the U.S. But they just try to set up their agenda just like a peace treaty or peace system on the Korean Peninsula to denuclearize on the Korean Peninsula. And therefore, the U.S. side is now collecting information and data and the positions from South Korea, from China, or from North Korea. And North Korea realized that it is time for them to negotiate directly with the U.S. and they just explain what they really wanted and what they really could achieve. And such kind of withdrawal of U.S. Troops on the Korean Peninsula is a very old agenda, but they repeated it. And they want to separate opinions or policy within South Korea. And therefore, it's kind of a political tactics or strategy that they could control and to initiate, and they could rule the whole peninsula issue by themselves.
I see. What's your take on this? It makes sense because probably because of the sanction situation, North Korea has to focus on the domestic issues rather than kind of reaching out to the global stage at this point.
Actually, this statement is reflect their frustration in dealing with the United States. U.S. has not shown any intention to have a dialogue with North Korea unless North Korea meets the three conditions. That's actually shutdown of Yongbyon facility and declaration of the nuclear program. Third, introduction of the IAEA inspectors back in Yongbyon. But those three conditions would not be met by North Korea at all. So they see there's no chance for North Korea to have a dialogue with the with the United States. So that actually leads to the conclusion that maybe South Korea is an alternative choice to drive a wedge between the United States and South Korea. They can find some opportunities to break out of international isolation. So they appealed to direct inter-Korean talks, military to military talks. Why don't we have military to military talks? And then we can start. That's the beginning of kinds of North Korea's charm offense vis-a-vis South Korea. That would be kinds of factor to contribute to the South-South conflict or dispute in Korea. How we are going to deal with this North Korea's proposal for the military to military talks between the two Koreas, and then are we ready to talk about the USFK, US forces in Korea? I don't think so. But actually, this is kinds of North Korea's version of a charm offense in a more sophisticated way. Actually, but I have found this is a reflection of their feeling of international isolation. It's very serious. No one is paying attention to North Korea, except they see, oh, maybe because Park Geun-hye administration has about 22 months in office, maybe she might feel some necessity to having a kind of tangible outcome in her policy toward North Korea. So they may just suggesting South Korea, oh, why don't you do something together? So that's the beginning.
Well, if it's a charm offense, Dr. Yoo, it's a strange one because it was very clear out of a lot of uncertainties that they will not give up on the nuclear program. And they expressed their desire to be acknowledged as one of the nuclear powers. And that kind of does not settle or gives a lot of provocative actions in the Korean Peninsula. And then you reach out for a dialogue. If it's a charm offense, it's a very kind of oxymoronic thing, do you think?
Well, actually, that's Kim Jong-un's calculation. But as I mentioned, South Korean government, Park Geun-hye government, is very clear that it is North Korea which has to change their policy, the basic policy, such as dual or parallel policy directions. They have to, if they really want to be treated or regarded as a nuclear weapon state, then they have to sacrifice their economy. And it is kind of the end of the regime survival. Very clear. But if North Korea decide to give up the nuclear weapon, as they promised at the SixParty Talks, then South Korea with international community are ready to talk and ready to help. And that is the very clear message from South Korean government. But now North Korea, maybe they try to to manipulate these kind of things once again. But if they realize that international community like U.S. and China is very strongly united under this kind of approach to make North Korea give up its nuclear ambition, then I think it's time for us to have a better chance to resume the six-party talks.
I see. Six-party talks.
So actually, North Korea, Kim Jong-un delivered his message in a more sophisticated way. They said, "Oh, North Korea is not going to use nuclear weapons against." Actually, North Korea version of no first use of nuclear weapons.
Right.
That's the first one. Second,
Unless their sovereignty
yeah,
is
sovereignty.
threatened.
Second, actually, North Korea is going to be more willing to cooperate with the international community in non-proliferation dimension, very much. So before that, they said, if the outside world stop the hostile policy vis-a-vis North Korea, we are eager to work with international community in non-proliferation. That means, so actually, maybe there's kind of another charm offense vis-a-vis international community. So if you stop the hostile policy vis-a-vis North Korea, we are eager to cooperate with you. That's opening up kinds of charm offense vis-a-vis the United States. I think maybe Russia and China will take that point very seriously, and then they might ask the United States. This is the North Korean intention to have some negotiation on non-proliferation. Why don't we start kinds of talks on maybe six-party talks, or to think about maybe probing the North Korean intention. So
Right.
North Korea has sent out some the message to indirectly to the United States, but it was not well received by the United States.
We've discussed the major controversial issues surrounding the 7th Congress held in North Korea. And later on, I'd like to touch upon the responses from the international community and appropriate measures necessary to deal with the North. But before that, let's take a look at a short video footage.
On April 28th, right before North Korea's 7th Congress of the Workers' Party, UN Security Council held an emergency meeting to discuss North Korea's latest missile launches. North Korea has continuously carried out provocative actions despite the strengthened global sanctions. And the 7th Congress was held in the North amid rising tensions. How would the international community view this political event, which took place in Pyongyang? Pyongyang has invited more than 100 foreign journalists to cover the 7th Congress of its ruling Workers' Party. And all eyes have been on the hidden intention behind Kim Jong-un's nuclear development and current situation facing the North Korean society. However, the North has barred the foreign media from the actual event, and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has officially declared the country as a nuclear state.
핵 보유국으로서 침략적인 적대 세력이 핵으로 우리의 자주권을 침해하지 않는 한 이미 천명한 대로 먼저 핵무기를 사용하지 않을 것이며 국제사회 앞에 지닌 핵 전파 방지 의무를 성실히 이행하고 세계의 비핵화를 실현하기 위하여 노력할 것입니다.
Neighboring countries have shown their own responses to the North's big political event. South Korea and the U.S. have exchanged their opinions on Kim Jong-un's opening address and the overall event. The two countries have agreed to strengthen bilateral cooperation on future policy toward North Korea. China, which has been one of the closest allies of the North, has sent congratulatory messages to North Korea's ruling party on the opening of the 7th Congress, as well as to Kim Jong-un, who has been given the new title of the chairman of the Workers' Party of Korea. However, Chinese President Xi Jinping has only sent the congratulatory letter without sending the delegation to the North. Japanese media outlets have condemned the idolization of Kim Jong-un within the North Korean society and has rejected the North's nuclear status. Kim Jong-un has consolidated his power through the 7th Congress, which has grabbed the global attention. And now is time for the international community to prepare for appropriate measures to deal with North Korea.
There was a emergency session of the Security Council to condemn the missile launches that Korea has perpetrated. It's been delayed.
Yeah, delayed.
What do you think of the significance and also the delays?
Well, actually, we already passed a very strong sanctions against North Korea when North Korea tested the first nuclear weapons and February 7th launching of their long-range missile. And therefore, I think it's necessary for us to talk, and we can persuade North Korea, and we will wait what the actual consequences of that kind of strong sanctions against North Korea. So we can pass a resolution or any kind of statement against North Korea, but I don't think that is important at this moment. Maybe Russia maybe reconsider, and maybe China and Russia try to persuade North Korea, and they can talk with directly with the U.S. And therefore, I don't think it's a main issue at this time, that the delay of the strong statement against North Korea.
Of course, it's not a big issue, but anyhow, it's kind of Russia's intention to be recognized as an important player. That actually happened when we tried to pass the UN Security Council resolution, sanction resolution 2270. Russia actually asked us a revision, and then they demanded the exclusion of aviation fuel, that kinds of things. So it's not actually meaningful in overall terms of sanctions vis-a-vis North Korea, but Russia inserted that position to be seen, Russia as an important player in this game. So the actual delay of the chairman's statement, rolling text, could be seen as kind of Russia's diplomatic the adventurism, or to be seen as an important player. But in general, I think that's the first point. Second, maybe Russia doesn't want to be tougher sanction vis-a-vis North Korea at the point of time. They want a kind of breathing space for the time being, unlike China. China has been very forthcoming and very cooperative in enforcing sanctions nowadays. So actually, China has made a statement condemning North Korea for its launch of the Musudan, actually. So it's really unreasonable for Russia to block or delay the chairman's statement at this point of time.
Right. The Security Council situation is getting more complex, but what comes to the focus is, as you mentioned, that China's role is very important in economic terms, and also their role politically at this point. Now, if China is opposing North Korea's policy of nuclear equipping themselves with the nuclear powers, do you think that this pushing through the nuclear program, do you think this is a viable option? Now, it has a consequence in economic terms as well.
Well, I think China is very important in dealing with this kind of situation, and China is China has sending a very clear message to North Korea. Without giving up the nuclear development program, China cannot support and cannot help. But once North Korea decide to stop developing and finally give up nuclear weapon program, then China would support, and they would like to continue or resume a dialogue with the participant countries, the peace mechanism. At the same time, North Korea should get back to the SixParty talks to denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula. So I think China's position is very clear, and its influence is very important, and therefore North Korea now feel that Chinese policy is up to their own world. And President Xi Jinping is very clear to work to what they really achieved at this moment.
So, but it seems to me that I'm a little bit concerned about the full scope of implementation of sanctions by Chinese government. First of all, actually they are so much concerned with the stability of North Korean regime.
Right.
So actually they put more importance of maintaining the stability in North Korea over denuclearization. That's the one thing. But they are not going to be much more cooperative in enforcing tougher sanctions vis-a-vis North Korea. For example, we have not enforced financial sanction yet.
Right.
What would be the Chinese position if we decide to impose the financial sanction vis-a-vis North Korea? Second, Chinese took these measures as a kind of U.S. design to contain China. So this is another complicated issue. So whether we will be able to persuade China to, it is not designed to contain China, it is designed to solve North Korean nuclear problem. The second. Third issue about the sequence or what will be the relation between the peace talks and denuclearization. China has demanded the parallel pursuit of peace talks and the denuclearization. They always say, North Korea feels threatened by the United States. Unless North Korea feels secure, they would not give up nuclear weapons. So you guys must start talks on peace regime on the Korean Peninsula. But that's not not our position. I mean, the U.S. and South Korea are opposing. That's a peace talks related to this denuclearization. Of course, if we have made some meaningful progress in denuclearization, we will be able to talk about peace regime.
Right.
But that's the spirit of September 19th joint statement of 2005. So we have to ask China to honor the agreement we made in 2005.
Dr. Yoo, we're talking about this development that North Korea seems to be more isolated from the rest of the country, not only because of the sanctions, but because of the important act that China plays. Add to the injury, I guess, the last month when President Park visited Iran, the Iranian President Rouhani also said, being gone through a kind of similar situation, Iran we thought would be at least favorable to North or not even comment, but very adamant about opposing the North Korea's nuclear program. So further isolation from the rest of the world. Do you think that this situation would add to the effectiveness of the sanction so that North Korea would finally have some motivation to come to the table?
Well, I think Iranian case is one of the good examples that once a state or a country decide a right direction, then international community is ready to cooperate for prosperity and stability. And that's what we had achieved in normalization or resuming the normalization with Iran. And Iran definitely had cooperated with North Korea in the past. And therefore, I think it's a clear message to North Korean leaders that it is time for North Korean leaders to decide whether they to maintain or stabilize their own regime by giving up the nuclear weapon. Then, if they continue to this kind of pursue the nuclear power status, then I think there is no hope for North Korea.
Even in the domestic issues, we see that there are a lot of people from North Korea exiting, or it's a kind of a large-scale exodus. But what's different these days is that seemingly well-to-do class people in the North has been kind of taking a route of exiting North Korea. Is that, do you see as an indication that things are getting worse inside, even though they're boasting about the economic progress?
Well, I think it's too early for us to expect there is a kind of cleavages inside North Korea. But outside, there are some people who had the chance to see outside the world, and therefore they can compare whether they to return back to North Korea or they have to escape from that kind of a situation, because North Korean regime already asked them to do their own duties, and therefore they had a chance to decide. And therefore, 13 out of 20 decide to defect, and 7 of them return to North Korea. That's the reality. So I think inside North Korea, that situation is not the same. But I think in the long run, if North Korea decide to pursue this kind of isolation or this kind of abnormal situation, then inevitable for North Korean society should be diverse, or there are some kind of cleavages inside or even among the top elite.
I see. We should begin to kind of wrap up our talks, but kind of a clincher question of sort is that, so in the final analysis, do you think that the Party Congress has been for the domestic concerns of consolidating for the power and procedure, rather than showing to the rest of the world, because they didn't get to invite the other distinguished guests.
They have invited foreign reporters, but they did not allow them to do actually the live broadcast.
So
inside.
is this for the solidarity inside, which might indicate that things are getting pretty dicey inside?
I think this is more procedural event to show this is the beginning of Kim Jong-un's North Korea. So rather than focusing on international community, they more internally focus their own policies. This is kind of political show, rather than the meaningful, the policy departure from previous the leader like Kim Jong-il. So actually, Kim Jong-un has reaffirmed the parallel pursuit of nuclear and economic progress, economic development. So nothing new at all, but they actually has made some ripples by suggesting the dialogue with South Korea and are eager to come back, eager to work with the international community on non-proliferation front. So we should not be misguided by this North Korea charm offense. We should remain united, and also we should avoid South-South conflict and dispute. We must be very cool and cool-headed in dealing with North Korea's party Congress result.
I see. In that regard, Dr. Yoo, the National Unification Advisory Council's role would be very important in kind of discerning what the situation is. What do you think about the role of the council as well as what the government should do?
Well, actually, our council is a kind of advisory council to the president as a chairperson. As Dr. Choi mentioned, it is time for us to make a consensus, not just among ourselves inside South Korea, but we should extend our understanding to international community. And therefore, our council had their own chapters overseas and also domestic. And we try to make a kind of public diplomacy to explain the situation on the Korean Peninsula and to reach out to the policy decision makers in every country surrounding Korean Peninsula to support our government policy and to make a denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and prepare for the peaceful unification.
I see. That would be the ultimate goal of the council. We expect the good result to come out of that advice. What about Dr. Choi's advice?
I agree with you, because actually it is a matter of the international community as well as the domestic audience. So, but we must be very clear what kinds of unification process we are going to pursue, and also what are the steps we are going to take, and also what kinds of alternative future we can offer to North Korea to allure them to give up their nuclear weapons very much. So we are in a much better position, but first thing first, we have to be able to enforce sanctions as far as we can to get all the key members cooperate in enforcing the sanctions. But on the other hand, we have to think about what kinds of peace talks or peace regime we can think of as an intermediary step before achieving the unification. That's lacking nowadays. So I'm sure that Dr. Yoo will be working hard on this kinds of peace regime on the Korean, not peace talks. We have to make it clear. It's a peace regime which is broader than the peace talks. So we have to think about what is the intermediate step we have to offer to not only to North Korea, but also to other international community.
As complex as the situation is, a lot of thinking must be going into this to kind of lure North Korea into this. Thank you for your contribution today.
Thank you.
In the past, Party Congress in North Korea had significance in foundation and direction, as we discussed. We looked at the latest one to see if we can discern a similarly important shift in the direction. So far, the closely guarded event seems to be more for internal purposes and offers no change in the nuclear stance. And yet, they urge dialogue with the South. Their credibility as low as it is, the future of North Korea relations seem very murky indeed, but we remain hopeful. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.